welcome back to the channel. It's been a couple months since we've done any PlanSwift videos, and we thought it was time to get to templates and assemblies. Templates and assemblies is the real power in PlanSwift. I've been using PlanSwift for over 15 years, and the reason I've stayed with PlanSwift is because of the templates and the assemblies features, where I can customize the kind of takeoff I'm doing and reuse it over and over. I've made literally hundreds of templates and then turn those into assemblies, and we'll talk about the difference between a template and assembly in a second. But the customization that you can do with templates and the creating not only a reusable feature in your takeoff, but one that allows you to use variables, whether it be thickness of concrete, in my case, the width of a trench, the amount of dumpsters you will need. If you can think any variable that you'll have when you're taking off a slab, a wall, an area of excavation, and you can plug that into your PlanSwift template. So it can simply be a choice of either entering something into a cell or a pull-down list. That's where the real power of PlanSwift is. So after all the user features and basic estimating or takeoff videos, we thought it was time to show you the basics of the templates. We're going to call this Templates 101. Now, what's the difference between a template and assembly? If you've ever done an Excel spreadsheet and saved that to reuse it over and over, that's basically a template. Whether you actually created an Excel template or just reusing that spreadsheet, you're still using it as a template. And you probably customize it so you can enter different data for different kinds of jobs. It's virtually the same in PlanSwift. We create basically templates from actual takeoffs, and then we add custom fields to it, or fields that we can enter custom data into, and then save that as a template so we can reuse it over and over again. All right. If you haven't already started PlanSwift, get your PlanSwift open. We are using version 10.3. Version 11 is maybe out by the time that you see this video. I've not tested version 11, so anything I show you should be adequate for 10.3. Let's get into starting. So we're going to go in, and I've already prepped a plan here. All right, so we're going to take this plan, and I've already highlighted the blue box using the PlanSwift markup tool, and we're going to take off that area that's inside the blue box. Now, whether you're a concrete contractor or a demo contractor like me, it pretty much is the same issue. So we're going to use an area tool, and we're going to take this off and then customize it and make it into a template. So first thing we want to do is we want to click on the area. And just don't use the pull downs, just the general area. It's going to come up. It's got a simple like 3-property or 3-field box. And we're just going to say basically remove slab on grade. And we're going to add to these things, and we can pick a color. And we're just going to pick light blue. And really that's all in this simple box, dialog box, that's all it's asked, and that's all we're going to use for the moment. We're going to click on OK, and I'm going to click on these corners and snap it in. If you don't understand how snap works, go back to one of my previous videos, and I always keep snap and ortho turned on. And I'm going to click the last point and either hit escape or close the digitize record. Either way makes it. And we're going to go over takeoff summary, and we can see that we, under our title here, we've got remove slab on grade. And I'm going to go, and I like things to be organized. I have several videos going on in this series. So remove slab on grade, about 3,010 square feet. All right. So now that we've done that, we've got our basic takeoff. If we right click and go on to properties, it gives us that limited dialog box, which is what they call form. And if you haven't had a chance to see my other videos, all the power of PlanSwift is in the advanced tab or window. So open the advanced window, and it looks a little bit overwhelming, and after a while you just get used to most of the things you're going to be doing is going to be in the estimating group. And when we add things to it, it's usually always the estimating group, unless it's something around titling or things like that, and then we may go into the item group. But we usually do not put anything in or mess with any of these other groups. And if you haven't gone through some of the more advanced videos in the past, it explains a lot what's in these properties, but we're going to tell you exactly what to do step by step. So the first thing we want to do is we go to looking at our estimating group. This is the quantity, you see takeoff. Takeoff is the normal, as you're taking off, it is a takeoff item that puts it in. In this case, it's area, so it puts it in square feet. The first thing we want to do as part of making our template is I do not like to see decimals when I'm doing anything. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click inside this box, and I'm going to pull down menu on Insert Special, and I'm going to say Round Up, and just click outside of the box. And you'll see that it rounded up. The decimals is gone. Now it's just 3,010 square feet. Perfect. So that's step one. Step two, we want to add, because we're figuring slab thickness, whether you're doing demo or actually pouring, we need to know what the slab thickness is. So we're going to set a field. So when we use this template again, we can set the thickness and pick the thickness. So still in the estimating group, we're going to go up here and say Add Property. And we're going to say basically slab thickness. Now, it really doesn't matter what you name these as long as the names are unique and PlanSwift is not already using them. So of all these options here, you really don't need to worry about most of these things. Now, the only thing I do like to use occasionally when I'm picking from a known list of sizes, and slabs tend to be usually one of a few different sizes. So I may go over here, and you see this box over here under Simple List? Now, I just simply put in, and don't put in, if you're saying like 4-inch slab, don't put in the inch mark because it needs to take a numeric value, so it doesn't need to know the inch. So I'll say 4, and then enter, 5. I'm making a pull-down list. 6, 8, 10, 12. Now, because I'm not clicking only allow choosing from the list, it will allow me to add a custom size, 5.5 inch, for example. That's why I leave the decimal places at 2, so I can put in the decimal equivalent of a fraction. So I'm going to go OK. And now you see there's a field. Now, I can leave that field blank, or I can go ahead and put in a default value. I'm going to go ahead and put in a default value of 6 inches. Now, I could have just picked it from the list, but you see that I typed it in. Either way will work. All right, so now we've added the slab thickness. Okay. Let's see what's next. All right. The other thing is PlanSwift really doesn't know what this 6 represents. So over in Input Units, we'll click down here. We'll say inch, and automatically it will, on the output, it would say inch. Now, if we wanted to convert from inches to feet, PlanSwift has the ability to do that inside the program. I don't use that too often, but you do have the ability to type one thing and it converts it to another. All right. Now, we want this slab thickness to show up in the name of the label. So when we pick it off a list, we can have lists of, if we wanted to, different thicknesses. Of course, we can always change that. But for purposes of, I like to be able to show on a list what I'm starting out with, whether it's 4 inches, 6 inches, whatever. So I'll go up to the name, label, open item, and you see this little 3-dot box? That basically is where you go and you can uh, edit the formula. And anything in, and that's why it says under formula, you're actually editing the formula. So where it says slab, remove slab on grade, I'll put in space. Then I'll hit this little insert property and go over to, this is the list of all the fields that are as part of this record. So a lot of times when you insert something new, it'll be at the bottom. And sure enough, there it is. Slab thickness, relative path. Do not put a full path. You want it to keep it as relative. Click on OK. And it puts in slab thickness. It'll put in the numeric value. Now, the only thing it won't put in is this inch or feet. So I'll put in the inch symbol and hit OK. And now, let me spread this out a little bit. You can see that now the label, the result is, it says remove slab on grade 6.00 inches. So if it was 6.5 inches, it would say 6.5. And that customizes our label for it. Because remember, we're doing this not just for the takeoff here. We're doing this so we can recreate this and reuse this as a template. So I could have done this takeoff and then just gone back afterwards and done all this to the fields. You can do it either way. I'm doing it as we go along, so it makes more sense. As we create other things that we're using in this takeoff, I'll do the same thing. Go in there and make those properties so we can easily save them as a template. Next is, how does it show up on your form? Remember we said we're in advanced, and in form, it only showed those 3 fields. Well, this is how, when you bring up a template, form is the default. So that's where you want to customize what you or your user, if you're doing this for other people. So we'll go back into advanced, and you see these checkboxes on the side here? If it's relevant to the type of field it is, it will show all these fields in the form. Some of these aren't relevant. That's why they're not showing them. So we'll leave color on. We'll click off field type, hatch pattern color, texture. I don't know why all these things are defaults, but they are. And we'll click what we do want to see in there is, we want to see the name. We want to see the item number. So if we're adding a custom bid item number to it, it allows us to put it right there in that field. We want to be able to put a cost in for that field if we're costing it right then there, as well as a markup. I'm not going to use cost type. I'm going to use slab thickness. And now when I click on form, we see it's starting to put together, like we got a name, color, slab thickness, markup, cost each, and item number. Now it's not organized the way I want to, so I just go back in advanced, and you'll see at the top here, form layout. And just remember, you'll need a little bit of practice with this, but it's really not that hard. So now that I've checked the fields I want to show in my form box, I'm going to go to form layout, and the order it shows in is how I can organize this. So I'm going to take the item number and I'm going to put it to the top. And then the name field I'm going to put next to it by clicking same row. And watch what happens here when I click on same row. It sucks it in, right? And then color and slab thickness. I can put slab thickness and move it up and put color on the same row. And then markup and cost each. I'm going to take cost each, move it up, and put markup and cost up in the same row. And now when I click OK and click on form, now I've got a little bit more customizations. And you can do it any way you want to. You'll see some of my forms in a minute that are very elaborate with checkboxes and all kinds of stuff as I'm making these templates more powerful, that I put them in my form for what I normally want to use, so I don't have to go into the advanced box or advanced dialog to do things. I do try to do everything in the form that normally I would use during the portion of my takeoff. So we're going to hit OK. Now, you really, if we go into our estimating, you really don't see much there. This particular estimating is the default layout. And you see the 310 square feet, and you see there's no cost associated with it yet. There's no markup, no price total. And there again, these columns you see are all customizable and has nothing to do with what we just did. So if I go back, and I can actually right-click on it right here. Go back to the advanced tool. And what next do we want to do? Well, we want to add volume and weight fields, because in this case, I need to know how much volume in cubic feet, and then as a function of that, how much weight, so I can calculate how many dumpsters or roll-off containers I'm going to need. All right. So we're going to, there again, remember I said most of these custom fields we're going to add to the estimating group. So in the estimating group, I'm going to go back and say add property. And let's see, the first one we're going to call this removal. And then I put a parentheses CF to remind myself that the removal is in cubic feet. And we're going to leave it at 2 decimal places and OK. So a lot of these other things, you just very rarely do you need to do anything else with these other choices. So now you see that I have removal in cubic feet. Now this is going to be a calculated field. So it's not something you're going to enter, so it will not have a checkbox. So I'm going to click inside the formula, and you see that there again, you got the little choice where you formula editor. Bring this up, and I'm going to choose from a list, and there again, there's the removal cubic feet added at the bottom. So new ones a lot of times will be added at the bottom, and the other ones will be inserted at kind of random in the list. So we're going to go, because I like using the roundup feature of quantity and not the takeoff, so I'm going to go back to quantity, because we've already optimized that. And I'm going to go OK, and it puts quantity in. Now quantity what? Quantity is in square feet. So I'm going to say quantity, and hit the multiplication symbol, times, and go back up and pick up another field. And this time I'm looking for slab thickness. And because slab thickness is in inches, it's not going to calculate it properly. So I'm going to go over here to the left of the slab thickness field and put in the left parentheses and go to the right of it and say divide 12. That will divide it it will divide by 12 to make it into feet, because we want to calculate square feet by depth in feet to give me cubic feet. And by doing that, I've converted it inside the formula to cubic feet. The only thing else I want to do at this point is, now that I've done that, I'll hit OK. And you see it says 1505. Now, it just happens to be that there was no decimals, but in a lot of cases, you will have decimals. So the last thing I'll do is, once again, insert a special formula, round up the whole item, and that'll make sure it's always no decimals. I don't want to see cubic, I don't want to see a portion of a cubic feet. I want rounded cubic feet. And then I go over to input units, just like I did before, and I tell it that this is cubic feet and leave it at cubic feet. And at that point, I want to protect the formula. I don't want it messed up. So I click here, the little lock. Boom, I've locked that formula. So it's good to go, and we now have got a cubic feet of removal. The next thing we want to do is I want one that tells me weight. So basically weight of the concrete. So because weight is not already a used field name, I can just put in weight. But I could say weight, and then I could say parentheses pounds if I wanted to, versus tons. So people always know what's the weight you're talking about. You're talking about in pounds or tons. So we'll do that. LBS, weight pounds, leave it at 2. And there we're going. We're going to go back into, we're going to make a calculated field. So we're going to pick the one we just did, removal in cubic feet. Okay. And then we're going to say our multiplication, and concrete weighs 150 pounds a cubic foot. So we're just going to put in 150 pounds. And it's going to tell me, there you go, 225,750 pounds. And there again, I don't want portions of pounds, so just in case it wants to do that, I'm going to round up. And then here, there is no predetermined input for pounds, so I just type in LBS and then make over into the other one because it doesn't see what that is. I just type in LBS again, so there's no conversion issues that PlanSwift tries to think it needs to convert LBS into something else. We don't want any conversion, and boom, weight is done. Now, it's a reason I like doing things at separate function. I want the cubic feet and I want the weight separate, because in other things I'll do, like calculating dumpsters, I just need to pick that particular field and it gives it to me, versus making more convoluted calculations or calculated fields. So these two are good examples of a calculated field. Works a lot like you did in Excel. It's not complicated. Basically, you can pick choices off the pull down, or the types of operators you're using, or you multiplying, dividing, or you're adding something together. It really, try it out. If you do it wrong, PlanSwift's going to show you that you've got some type of syntax error. So now we've made we've made 2 calculated fields that now tells us the thick, or well, actually we made a pull down variable that tells us the thickness, and we made 2 calculated fields that calculates volume and weight. At this point, we've created enough that we could save it as a template, but we're going to do a few more things before we do that. So let's take a break, and we'll come back and get back in there and add some more custom fields. Okay, now that we're back, we've been adding custom fields to our form so we can reuse this as a template. And we're going to do a little bit more with this before we save it as a template, which is actually the easiest part. So the last one we did was adding weight, and that's a function of how many cubic feet. Next thing I want to be able to do is add checkboxes and that checkboxes being on or off will basically click into a formula that will add that basically, based on the checkbox being true or not, will do a function in a calculated field. It sounds really complicated, and it's not. So let's first add our checkbox, and usually checkboxes I'll add to the item group. So add property, and I'll say basically hand removal. I want to know when I'm doing my takeoff, am I removing by hand or removing by machine? And basically it's a yes-no kind of on-off function that's going to determine what price I use for this particular item, which is actually the removal item. So, and from there, I'm going to say, I'm going to go under number and change it from number to a checkbox. And really, that's all I'm going to have to do. And watch what happens. Now I have a check box for hand removal. If it's not checked, it's false. If it's checked, it's true. Now, if we go to one of our takeoff items we did in an earlier training video, and we go to properties and open it up, you'll see what a custom form, input form can look like for any of your templates. Basically, when I start this particular template, it tells me the name, which I could change in there. I could change it from slab on grade and call it something else if I wanted to. Maybe it's outside pavement. And I can certainly change the thickness by either the pull-down menu or typing something in. I can put in a target per cubic foot, which is typically how I price out removal, and then a markup if I wanted to mark that up for any reason. A crew rate if I wanted to bid this by effort or duration versus unit prices, and then of course the crew hours. And then in there you see I've got these different check boxes. Hand removal to tell me I'm removing it by hand, and that gets me a certain price. Effort driven that tells me ignore the unit prices that I'm using in there and do it by the crew rate based on the hours. And then dumpsters by GC and dumpster round. Dumpsters by GC is if the GC is providing the dumpsters, I want to zero out the cost. Dumpster round is if I've got a small job, I'm not going to have to, and I'm renting these dumpsters, I'm not going to pay for half of a dumpster. I'm going to have to pay for a whole dumpster. So the dumpster round feature on small jobs makes sure that I'm rounding up to the nearest whole dumpster. I do not use it on large jobs because I'll have several items in my takeoff, and if I rounded the dumpster for each item, after a while there, I would have several more dumpsters than I actually need. So it's a function I use for small jobs. So let's go into the advanced and see how I use this. In this particular case, like we're doing the hand removal, it says, all right, if the box is checked, it means it's true. And that then clues into into several customized fields on cost and the cut type that's displayed in the label. As you can see over here, you can where it says hand because that's checked hand. If I uncheck it, it changes to machine. Well, how does it automatically do that? So we're going to go through just a very simple, statement of how it does that. So if I unlock here, I can see that first I need to go into and tell you that under the edit property, if I want to use an if-then-else statement, which is where the real power of PlanSwift is, just like it is in Excel or anything else, where you're basically making a decision tree, I have to go and tell it that I'm using an expression. Now, I prefer Pascal over Basic, but if you like Basic, you can do that. But this instruction is going to show you how to use the Pascal equivalent. So I have to check that on and then make sure the Pascal is checked so I can use a Pascal statement for determining whether something is one or the other, if then else. And you can do nested if then else's, but we're just going to do a simple if then else on it to start you out. So click OK, and I'm going to go back in here and hit my formula editor, and I can see there's my formula. And I'm going to bring up the bigger version because this as tight as the screen is, you may not be able to read it too well. So let's bring up, I've got where I blew it up a little bit here. So basically in Pascal, we have to do some basic syntax. So looking at our formula editor, we see that we've got a basic Pascal statement. If hand removal equals true, then result hand. And hand is a text value because it doesn't have the brackets around it, it tells you it's not a field. I'm entering a value in. So basically in that little labeling, basically it's looking to see if hand removal is true. If it is true, it adds hand to the label, else it adds machine. Very simple, one level if then else statement. So if you get, here's your editor, if you somehow, we're just going to make one change there and I'm going to go OK. Error, unknown identifier. So if you get your syntax wrong, in the result, it won't be able to calculate it and you'll have to correct that error. And when you do, you get the proper results. So how do you know that you're getting the right results? You go to the results cell or column, and it will show you that it put the word hand in there. And then under, because that field is cut type, you can see up here that I've got cut type as a field, and it inserts the word hand in the label. That's a very simplistic use of an if-then-else statement. I wanted to be able to show when I'm doing this that I'm either I've got hand or machine picked, and then of course in the pricing that selection of either hand or machine affects the pricing as well. So that's the basics of an if-then-else statement. You can use nested statements. We'll probably have a whole episode on if-then-else Pascal statements and show you a little bit more detail. Most times, a simple single-level if-then-else statement is all you need to do to provide a lot of horsepower to PlanSwift. And think of it just like any number of reasons why if you use an if-then-else. So you can change a value of something based on like a checkbox or a value you input or something else, a value of some other field in your template. So don't think you can't do this because you can. You can always look up Pascal statements, if-then-else Pascal statements. I mean, Pascal's been around forever. It's a very robust programming language, but you need to know very few things about it to be successful. And really, how to type this if-then-else statement or a nested if-then-else statement, if you've got multiple choices. If it's this, then that. If not, it's that. If not, it's that. So basically, they have multiple choices versus a single choice, yes or no, on or off kind of thing. So besides the hand removal checkbox, we've got the dumpster by GC, dumpster round, and effort driven. Those also look to Pascal statements, and based on it being a true or false, basically changes either quantities or cost based on our simple formulas that we have. And you can see a lot of the formulas down through here, how it derives those formulas and how it modifies it based on the checkboxes. It seems like way, way beyond what you think you probably can do in PlanSwift, and I'm telling you, you can do this. Start out with the simple stuff, like changing a label, just like we showed you, and then maybe changing things like preferred customer. Maybe a preferred customer gets a 15% discount. So you check the box for preferred customer, and under your cost item, your cost calculation, if checkbox yes, the cost gets deducted by whatever percentage you put in there. I do recommend when you create any calculated field or fields that have expressions in it to lock that so you don't actually mess them up or delete them and have to go back and recreate them on the fly. When you're doing a takeoff and you've got to get a bid out, You don't want to have to be correcting errors in your formulas, whether it be an expression or a simple calculation. So let's go back to our estimating and open this back up. And we see there again, like I said, you can create these forms to have any number of items you want. These are the items you would normally manipulate when you're doing a new takeoff. So whatever you want to have in there, simply check the box on the field and then go into form layout and basically, I mean, it's a limited, you can't do a whole lot of manipulation like how wide it is, but you can where you show it on the form and what you show on the form. Now that we've done this, well, how do we take it? How do we save it as a template? That's really the easy part. Hit OK. If you've got all your changes, now we're going to go ahead and put in, for right now, the purposes of this, if we're going to say $4 each, and we're going to put a markup of 0. And we're also going to add, we didn't add description before to that, so we're going to add that back in. A lot of times I need to have a description, so I'm going to change this and put description after that, and then give name its own level. Actually, take that back. I'm going to put description below and have name on top and description its own level. All right. So in a lot of these other things, you know, you can actually, if you don't need that much width, you can actually suck things up and so it looks more like that. So our item, our name, our description we want to type in. Template for slab removal, just a description item, or it can be anything you want to type it in, or you can leave it blank for a description of the work you're doing. Either way, you can always go back and change that. So I'm going to leave it at this point because I want to save this. So what do I need to do to save it as a template? This is the easy part. Right-click on it and say copy. Then go to your templates, and depending on where you have I keep them in groups. Wherever you keep your templates in a group, I always make a separate one. I don't try to add it to any of the default ones that PlanSwift gives you. In this case, I've got a training group, but it could actually be a name of a group like other names I've got here. So I simply, at that point, if I'm in that tab, I just say right-click and I say paste. And now I have a template. Now, if you get to the point like I do where you've got lots of templates, then I group them as well into templates for like slab on grade, trenching, elevated slabs, and so forth and so on. There's literally hundreds of templates in that, in this particular one. But for this purposes of this episode, we're just going to leave it at that. Now, how do I reuse it? Let's go back into Home, and let's go and create another slab removal in another area, and this slab is going to be, for whatever reasons, a different thickness. So I'm going to go down over to my templates, and I'm going to change it to my other group, and there's my templates. Now, when I go to Start, you see basically the green symbol there that lets you to start recording. And anytime you start a recording from a template, the form's always going to come up. If you start one from an existing item already taken off in your takeoff summary, it may not start up with a field. It may just start recording. So just remember, if you ever start something in a template it's always going to ask you to confirm. In this case, I can say, well, this is item 2, and this is, like I said, you can replace this, and I could say under mezzanine, and I can't type. And I'm going to change this to being a 4-inch slab, and I'm going to change the color, and I can change the price here. Really, there's no reason for the price. I'm just changing it. I could change. I usually do not deal with putting it in different folders, and I can change all these stuff after the fact too. And click OK, and it starts in right away on doing an area takeoff. So I can come down here, and I can now take this off, and I'm being kind of lazy, not very, and hit escape to stop it. And now under estimating, you can see I have a new slab on grade takeoff, and it gives me where it's actually done out the price, and there's the total, and tells me I've got 38 cubic feet. And I can do this all day long. I can make another one a different size, or I can simply go to my takeoff summary and reuse one if I'm adding to that. It's that complicated and that simple. And you can see there's our form now. And we can go into advanced, but we've created the form to look like that. So it'll pop up every time. And if I'm doing a new one, I can change the item number here. I can change the thicknesses. I can reuse this over and over till the cows come home. And over time, I can simply go in and to my templates, and I could add features, go in here and add features to it and build these templates to be more powerful. Or I can simply build new templates as I go along and replace the old ones, or add new templates to my group here. And that's the power of a template. All right, now that we've created our template for slab removal, we need to create a template that basically shows how we're going to saw cut this up. Now, in my case, I want to use a slab saw to cut this up in pieces that I can take out of the building. And there's some variables I need to plan into that, some check boxes. And we're going to use the grid tool, if you've never used the grid tool before, under area, and we're going to basically create a pattern. That pattern we will use and save it to a template, and that template becomes our slab sawing template that we can reuse over and over again for slicing and dicing up the concrete. Now, you think about it this way. You could use that same kind of procedure for determining the amount of rebar that you're going to put in the slab, because there again, you're creating a pattern based on dimensions. Every 12 inches, every 8 inches, every 24 inches, every 48 inches, whatever pattern you want. We're going to show you how to create a template using a grid tool, and it's very, very powerful. And so stay tuned on that. That'll be the next episode, and we'll have that to you shortly. And once again, we appreciate you subscribing to us, and we'll see you next time.